The Council of Interstellar Harmony had, in their infinite wisdom, decided to conduct what they called the greatest survival study in galactic history. Translation. They were bored. Council of Rex stood before the assembled representatives, his three eyes gleaming with what he probably thought was scientific enthusiasm, but really looked more like a kid about to microwave an ant farm. "We shall select 100 species from across the known universe," he announced, mandibles clicking with excitement, "and place them on planet designation 79 Kappa, a Class 10 Deathworld. For those unfamiliar with the classification system, Class 10 means everything here wants you dead, including the rocks. I'm Quirm, by the way. Junior observer for the Galactic Documentation Bureau. Lucky me, I got assigned to watch this disaster unfold in real time. My supervisor, an absolute nightmare of a Voltharian named Keswick, thought it would be educational. Educational. Right? Like watching a shuttle crash is educational. The experiment began on a bright morning, if you could call the toxic orange sunrise of 79 Kappa bright. 100 species, ranging from the crystallized metherians to the liquid-based flow forms, were dropped into various biomes across the planet. Each species received the same starting package, basic survival tools, a communication device, and a helpful pamphlet titled, "So You're Stuck on a Deathworld, a Beginner's Guide." The pamphlet was 3,000 pages long. Nobody read it. Within the first week, 12 species had already called for emergency evacuation. The flow forms discovered that the planet's humidity levels turned them into vapor. The Metherians learned that everything on this planet either wanted to eat them or dissolve them, sometimes both simultaneously. The Zorfians, who breathed pure argon, took one whiff of the oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere and just gave up. Can't say I blamed them, but then there were the humans. The humans. The human specimen, a female named Dakota Mills, was dropped into what the Council had designated as Hazard Zone Omega, which was essentially the planet's way of saying abandon all hope. This particular region featured carnivorous plants, acidic rain, temperature swings of 60 degrees within hours, and wildlife that made the predators on other continents look like domestic pets. Perfect place for a picnic. Really. I monitored her progress through the orbital satellite feed, expecting her to activate the emergency beacon within hours. Maybe days, if she was particularly stubborn. Humans were known for being stubborn. Also for being weirdly durable, but the Council had dismissed that as exaggerated rumor. The Council was about to learn something important about rumors. Day 3, Dakota had constructed a shelter. Not just any shelter, mind you. She'd built a 2-story structure using local timber, complete with a rainwater collection system, and what appeared to be defensive spikes. Who puts defensive spikes on a survival shelter? Humans, apparently. Subject appears to be adapting, I noted in my log, trying to keep my voice steady. Displaying unusual levels of environmental manipulation. Keswick leaned over my shoulder, his breath smelling like fermented plankton. Curious. Monitor closely. Day 7, things got weird. Dakota had apparently decided that merely surviving wasn't enough. While 43 species had already evacuated and another 20 were seriously considering it, this human had started farming. Farming. On a death world. She'd cleared a plot of land, planted seeds from the native flora, and had somehow convinced the local predators to stay away from her little agricultural experiment. How? I had no idea. The satellite footage just showed her yelling at a pack of 6-legged razor wolves until they retreated. Just yelling. In what universe does that work? This must be an error in the data, Keswick muttered, adjusting the sensors. Run a diagnostic. The diagnostic came back clean. Dakota Mills was genuinely thriving. By day 15, I'd started looking forward to checking her feed. It was like watching a disaster movie in reverse. While other species were huddled in their emergency shelters, praying to their various gods for rescue, Dakota had expanded her operations. She'd built what looked like an irrigation system, domesticated something that resembled a cross between a pig and a boulder, and had started collecting samples from the local ecosystem. Then came day 23. The day everything changed. I was reviewing footage from the Krelix delegation, who'd been dropped near a mountain range and were doing adequately, I suppose. They'd managed to not die, which on 7-9 Kappa counted as a major achievement. Suddenly, Keswick burst into the observation room, all 4 of his arm stalks waving frantically. "You need to see this," he said, which is never a good sign. He pulled up Dakota's feed. I blinked. Then blinked again. Then checked if someone had spiked my nutrition paste with hallucinogens. The human had built a restaurant, not a food preparation area. Not a simple cooking station. A full-service restaurant, complete with tables, chairs, and what appeared to be a sign made from woven vines that read Dakota's Deathworld Diner. "Is that?" I couldn't finish the sentence. "Yes," Keswick said flatly. "She's opened a restaurant. On a Class 10 Deathworld. During a survival experiment." I zoomed in the feed. Sure enough, there were other species there. Not humans. Other species from the experiment. A Tralaxian sat at one table, tentatively sampling something from a wooden bowl. 2 Hyperions were waiting near the entrance, looking uncertain but intrigued. A Volkesh, who I'd last seen 3 days ago crying in their shelter, was actually smiling while eating something that steamed and bubbled. "How is this possible?" Keswick demanded, as if I had answers. "How is she feeding them? Where is she getting ingredients? Why are they there?" I pulled up Dakota's communication logs. She'd been broadcasting on the general frequency, sending out messages to the other participants. The latest one made me laugh, though I tried to hide it from Keswick. "Tired of survival rations? Sick of eating processed nutrient blocks? Come to Dakota's Deathworld Diner, where we serve food that won't kill you, probably. Located in Hazard Zone Omega, look for the smoke signals. First meal free, because we're all going to die anyway, might as well die with a full stomach." "She's insane," Keswick declared. "This human is clearly suffering from psychological breakdown." But the satellite feed told a different story. More species were arriving. They came in pairs and small groups, drawn by curiosity, or desperation, or maybe just the promise of something other than the bland emergency rations. Dakota greeted each one, seated them, and served dishes made from ingredients that, according to our database, were either mildly toxic, completely inedible, or both, yet nobody died. In fact, they looked happy. The Tralaxian finished its meal and actually waved goodbye to Dakota before leaving. The Hyperions stayed for what appeared to be second helpings. Word was spreading across the planet. The emergency communication channels, which had been full of distress calls and complaints, now featured conversations about menu items and directions to the restaurant. "This is unprecedented," I said, updating my logs. "Subject has apparently discovered culinary applications for local flora and fauna previously considered dangerous. Or she's poisoning them slowly," Keswick suggested darkly. "Keep monitoring. I want hourly updates." As the first month approached, Dakota's Deathworld Diner had become the most talked about location on the entire planet. Species that had been demanding evacuation were now asking for extensions to their stay. The Volkesh had moved their shelter closer to the restaurant. A group of Pendrians had started helping with food preparation, apparently in exchange for meals and cooking lessons. The council was furious. This wasn't how the experiment was supposed to go. They wanted data on survival strategies, adaptation techniques, and species durability under extreme conditions. Instead, they were getting reports about a human teaching alien species how to make soup from carnivorous vegetables and apparently running a successful business on a planet designed to kill everything that landed on it. I had to admit, though, it was the most entertaining assignment I'd ever had. And something told me this was just getting started. Month 2 of the experiment brought what the Council would later describe in their official reports as catastrophic deviation from projected outcomes. I'd describe it as the moment when Dakota Mills accidentally started a revolution, but nobody asked me. The restaurant had expanded again. What started as a simple wooden structure now sprawled across half an acre, complete with an outdoor seating area, a garden that somehow flourished despite the acidic soil, and a smoking shed where Dakota cured meats from local predators. Yes, predators. She was hunting the things that were supposed to hunt her and turning them into menu specials. The special of the week: razor wolf ribs with a glaze made from fermented thornberries. According to the Hyperions who'd become regular customers, it was surprisingly non-lethal and actually quite good. I watched through the satellite feed as Dakota taught a Krelix named Bortum how to properly season a stew. Bortum, who 3 weeks ago had been hiding in a cave eating nothing but emergency rations and crying about the temperature fluctuations, was now wearing something that looked suspiciously like an apron and chopping vegetables with alarming enthusiasm. "She's recruiting them," Keswick observed, his tone hovering somewhere between horror and fascination. "The human is building a staff." He wasn't wrong. Dakota now had 5 regular helpers, all from different species, all of whom had apparently forgotten they were part of a survival experiment. They'd moved their shelters to form a small village around the restaurant. They'd built a shared water purification system. Someone, possibly the Volkesh named Trem, had started construction on what looked like a bathhouse. A bathhouse on a Deathworld. Because apparently, surviving wasn't enough. They needed luxury amenities too. The Council called an emergency session. I got to watch via live feed, which was better than any entertainment program I'd ever seen. Councillor Rex stood at the podium, his 3 eyes somehow managing to look both angry and confused simultaneously. "This human," he began, mandibles clicking rapidly, "has completely undermined the scientific integrity of our experiment. She's created a communal living situation, reducing individual survival pressure, and corrupting our data with variables we never accounted for." "Variables like cooperation?" asked Councillor Aleth, a Pendrian representative who looked amused. "Or perhaps the variable of not wanting to die alone and miserable?" "That's not the point." Vrek's voice rose to a pitch that made my audio receptors hurt. "The experiment was designed to test individual species adaptation, not collective problem-solving through the medium of food service." "Maybe that's our mistake," Elith suggested calmly. "Maybe we designed a stupid experiment." The chamber erupted into arguments. Half the council wanted to shut down the entire project. The other half wanted to see where this went. Meanwhile, on 7-9 Kappa, Dakota Mills was completely oblivious to the political chaos she'd caused because she was too busy teaching a Matherian how to make bread. A Matherian. They are silicon-based life forms. They don't even have digestive systems compatible with carbon-based foods. And yet there it was, learning to knead dough with its crystalline appendages, looking more content than any Matherian I'd ever seen. Then came the visitors. Week 9 brought the first non-participants to the planet. A trade vessel had picked up the communications chatter about Dakota's restaurant and decided to investigate. They landed near Hazard Zone Omega, probably expecting to find a crude survival camp with desperate aliens willing to trade anything for off-world supplies. Instead, they found a thriving community, a multi-species restaurant with a waiting list, and a human who greeted them with a smile and asked if they had reservations. "We don't take walk-ins during dinner rush," Dakota told the bewildered captain of the trade vessel, a Voltharian named Prex. "But I can seat you in about 40 minutes. Would you like to wait at the bar?" There was a bar. Of course there was a bar. Dakota had apparently discovered that certain local fungi, when properly processed, produced alcohol that wouldn't immediately kill most species. The bar was run by a Tralaxian named Squib, who'd previously been an emergency beacon technician, and was now mixing drinks like he'd done it his entire life. Prex, to his credit, decided to wait. He sat at the bar, ordered something called a Deathworld sunset, and proceeded to have his entire worldview altered. By the time Dakota seated him for dinner, he'd already made contact with 3 other trade captains, and was spreading word about the restaurant across local space. Keswick was having what I can only describe as a breakdown. "This isn't a survival experiment anymore," he muttered, reviewing the data streams. "It's become a tourist destination. A tourist destination on a Class 10 death world." He wasn't exaggerating. Within 2 weeks, ships were arriving regularly. Some came out of curiosity. Others came because the food was apparently that good. A few came because they'd heard rumors about the human who'd turned a death sentence into a business opportunity and wanted to see if it was real. Dakota handled the attention like she'd been preparing for it her whole life. She expanded the menu, hired more staff from the remaining experiment participants, and somehow convinced 3 different species to help build additional structures. The village around the restaurant now had proper roads, a marketplace where locals traded goods scavenged from the planet, and something that looked suspiciously like a school where Dakota taught survival skills to anyone interested. The council was losing their minds. The experiment had officially gone off the rails. Of the original 100 species, only 18 had evacuated. The rest had either joined Dakota's community, or established their own settlements nearby, using techniques they'd learned from her broadcasts. The survival rate was the highest ever recorded for a Class 10 Deathworld deployment, which should have been cause for celebration. Instead, Council of Rec was threatening to shut everything down and charge Dakota with violations of experimental protocols. "She's contaminating the data," he shouted during another emergency session. "We can't learn anything about individual survival when she's teaching everyone how to cooperate." "Actually," I interjected, surprising myself by speaking up during a council session, "we're learning quite a bit. We're learning that humans possess an apparently instinctive drive to create community even in hostile environments. We're learning that their approach to survival includes not just personal safety, but collective well-being. We're learning that they can somehow identify food sources in ecosystems where our best scientists said nothing was safely edible." Keswick stared at me like I'd grown extra appendages. "Are you defending the human?" "I'm defending good science," I replied. "And the science here is fascinating, even if it's not what we expected." Elith nodded approvingly. "The junior observer makes a valid point. Perhaps instead of terminating the experiment, we should adjust our parameters and continue observing." The vote was close, but ultimately, the council decided to let things continue. Partially because the data was genuinely interesting, and partially because shutting down Dakota's restaurant would now require dealing with angry customers from 17 different species, plus whatever trade captains had docked that week. Month 4 marked the experiment's official conclusion date, but nobody was leaving. Dakota's Deathworld diner had become a permanent establishment. The village had grown into a small town. 3 different species had opened their own businesses, including a tool shop run by the Krelix and a textile operation started by some enterprising Hyperions who'd figured out how to process local plant fibers into fabric. Dakota herself had adapted so completely to the planet that when the council offered her transportation back to human space, she declined. "Why would I leave?" she said during the exit interview, which I conducted personally. "I've got a business here, friends from across the galaxy, and honestly, the rent is great. 0 credits for prime real estate on a death world. Can't beat that." "But it's dangerous," I pointed out, though by that point, the statement felt ridiculous. "Class 10 death world. Everything wants to kill you." Dakota laughed, that peculiar human expression of amusement that still sounded slightly alarming to my ears. Yeah, but I learned something important these past few months. Everything here might want to kill me, but I'm way more stubborn than any of it. Plus, I make a mean razor wolf rib platter. That counts for something. The council published their findings 6 months later, though the conclusions were heavily debated. The official summary stated that humans demonstrated exceptional adaptability and previously undocumented social engineering capabilities in extreme environments. The unofficial summary, which Keswick told me over drinks one night, was simpler: humans are absolutely insane, and we should probably never underestimate them again. As for me, I got promoted to senior observer and assigned to monitor the continued development of what everyone now called Miller's Landing, named after Dakota. Last I checked, the population had reached 300 permanent residents from 42 different species. They'd built a proper spaceport, established trade agreements with 6 nearby systems, and Dakota had opened a second location near the coast. The Council of Interstellar Harmony learned a valuable lesson from their experiment. When you drop 100 species on a death world, most will fight to survive. A few will adapt and endure. But if you drop a human there, they'll probably open a restaurant, make friends with everyone, and accidentally start a civilization, and honestly, I couldn't wait to see what they did next. Hello everyone. If you are enjoying this video and finding it helpful, don't forget to support our channel. Please subscribe to our channel, press the like button, and share this video with your friends and family. Also, make sure to turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming videos. We regularly upload amazing, informative, and entertaining content just for you. Your support means a lot to us and motivates us to bring even better content in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and welcome to our growing community.